Hello, Professor Toybox here with a special bonus video today. This is the full build video that goes along with Toybox tutorial number 7. I use snippets of this video in the tutorial to keep it short and focused on the topic of build tips, but I know some of you are building my toy boxes on your own consoles or PCs and would appreciate seeing the full build video so you can follow along. So today I'm building the rest of the scenery in my Fantasia toy box. This will allow me to focus my tutorial series on the lessons I want to teach without worrying about any terrain, buildings, or decorations that might be missing. And when I'm done with this video, the entire setting for my Fantasia toy box will be completed. I already have the Magician's Castle that I built in an earlier tutorial. My plan for this toy box calls for a small village surrounded by some farms and woods and some mountains. I also want to have some rivers, lakes, and waterfalls where the brooms can fill their buckets as they wreak havoc on the countryside. So the first thing I'm going to do is start with the terrain. And even before that, I need to get some of these things out of the way. So I'm going to move the sky changer down below the terrain here and put it down here where it won't be blocking me from putting anything down. Same with the boombox. And the little starting pad, we'll go ahead and move this over a little closer to the castle. I think that should probably be fine. And then this piece of terrain, I'm going to go ahead and move out of the way for right now. And I'm going to put down a little bit narrower piece over here. I don't need that much empty space in front of this castle. And I think that lines up. Yep. And we'll go ahead and set the theme for this. And I'm using the Dragon's Domain theme for my terrain throughout this entire toy box. So I won't have to set that again. There we go. So one of the first things I'd like to do is set up a river that's running across here with a little bridge over it. And so I'm going to come over here to the river pieces. Here we go. And we're going to drop this down for right now. We'll come over here and put this here. And I'd like to have a bridge over top of this. And I think a good bridge to use is the one over here under the farm setting. However, there's a little glitch with this bridge in that, as you notice, it sits up above the terrain. And so because of that, we're going to need to kind of finagle this a little bit. So it's got to sit lower to get down here where we can see it. Where we can run over it without having to jump up onto the bridge. And so that means that our terrain blocks need to come down low enough to be able to go underneath that bridge. Like that. So I think that works pretty decent. And then we can come back over here to this big piece and slide this back over, and this is where the village will sit. Like that. And one way to get around in the drawers pretty quickly without having to scroll through them, again, is to pick up a block and drop it, and that puts us back over in that part of the drawer. So that's always a helpful tip, and I know I've showed you that before, but I don't always assume that you've seen all of my other videos, So I typically like to start with the terrain. These are the largest pieces that I have to work with, and these allow me to frame in my world and define the different areas and locations within my toy box. In this case, I want a valley where I can place the village, and I'd like to surround the valley with some hills and mountains. That'll provide a nice border for my toy box and help define the boundaries where the user can and cannot go. You don't want to create too large of an area because you don't want the terrain to fill up all of the memory before you can add in all of the buildings and details. But you need to create a toy box that's large enough to be able to explore and contain all of the games and adventures that you want to build into it. So it's really important to pay attention to the memory meter on the right-hand side of the screen so that you can keep track of how much the memory is growing. I usually devote 1/4 to 1/3 of my toy box to the terrain and leave the rest for the buildings and other toys. As you're building, you also want to be selective about the terrain pieces that you use. You don't want to use everything that you've got here in the drawer. You want to be selective so that you're not filling up the graphic memory with a whole bunch of models that you're only using once or twice. So it's important to be selective about the pieces you're using, and at the same time put those together in creative ways so it doesn't look like you're using the same limited number of pieces. I think a good rule of thumb that I've kind of been following in my own toy boxes on my Wii U is about 30 to 40 different terrain pieces. These include the flat blocks as well as the more complex mountain blocks. There we go. And what I'm going to do here is build a little valley around this block where the village is going to go. So we'll come over to the sloped pieces. And I think actually do that. That. There we are. That's looking pretty good. Okay. So now we got a valley starting to take shape here around the castle and the village. There we are. And I think that's looking pretty good. I'll fill that in just a moment. Let's see what we got so far. Yeah, I like that. Now just need to plug some of the holes like there. Like there. And over here. Very good. And I'm going to have this end in this little lake because I'm planning to put a waterfall right here with a hidden entrance to get into the caves that I want to put behind this. And I don't want to center this because I need to leave room enough for some blocks behind here. Like so, because the cave has to have a floor to run around on. And we also need to be able to have room enough to put some blocks around this. So I got room for one over there and two over here. And that's important because the caves are about half the width of these large blocks that I just put down. So I need to be able to fill in those without having any gaps. So we'll go ahead and put in two of these with a bend. Make sure the bend lines up. And I thought it'd be nice to have a little cave piece in here that you can come into. And on this end of the cave, we're going to make this a little bit windy. Like that. And the cave will exit over here. So now that we know where the cave is going to go, now we can fill in the blocks around this. So I'm going to go ahead and line these up, and I've spaced these apart in such a way that I can put these large blocks in here like this. And this will kind of form a cave wall here. And then we can kind of hide the caverns by placing these blocks up above. So as you're running around on top of this, it won't look to you like there's anything down below there, which is kind of cool. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so next, let's come over back to this waterfall piece for right now. And pick that up. And I think the pieces I need, are they down this way? Oh, those are the shorter ones. All right. So as I mentioned in the tutorial, there's a lot of different ways to put finishing edges around your worlds. You can have them like floating islands, or you can have them surround the edges with cliffs, which is what I'm going to do. So my village will be surrounded by mountains. And that seemed good to me. Now let's see if I put this here. How's that going to line up down the way there? I need some room, so we'll go ahead and put in one more cliff piece here. And then we'll have this bend and I think that'll be a little bit better. Okay. And then I'm going to do something a little bit different. Rather than surround this completely, we're going to go ahead and put in a little canyon back here. And so that I get the spacing right, we'll go ahead and come up to the Building Sets Group 1, and I want a rope bridge going across this. I think that would be kind of fun for up in the mountains. And I want to be able to have this somewhat long because I want this canyon to be a little bit wide. So if we do something like that, then we need something over on this side then to anchor that to. So I had to put the bridge in first in order to know where to put this piece and how far away from the other cliff. So we can do that, and then a large piece of cliff. There, and then we can continue the cliff on down this way. There we go, and now that's starting to take shape. That's looking good. Now the next question is how far to bring this over, and I think if we do it this way, with this in here, and then we do this, I think the spacing will be right. Not quite. Yeah, maybe that'll work out. Sorry, just kind of thinking through in my head how I want this to go. So if we do that and then anchor this around that way and build in this direction. And actually I'm going to go ahead and take that out because I think I'd like a way to get up onto the cliffs from this side of the toy box as well. So having the climbable piece in here would be a good thing. And then I'm going to go ahead and let that hang off the edge. It's not the prettiest, but it'll do. So now that we have that, we can fill in the cliffs along the top here. We're not going to have enough room here for another of those big pieces, so we'll have to do this. And actually, I can use fewer blocks if I use the wider one here. Like that. And this one is going to be too wide here. I don't want it sticking out that far, so we're going to need to use this block instead. I don't think I need anything that wide, so this should be fine. And we'll slide this over to hide the seam. Oh, and yeah, that's perfect. Good. Good, good, good. And it doesn't matter if we leave that little gap down there. Because players will never see that. There we go. So the terrain's taking shape. I like that a lot. I want to go ahead and fill in some of these little areas down here. So I'll pick that up and put that down to get back to this part of the drawer. And we're going to go ahead and put down a few little pieces here. That gives a ramp that's easier for the brooms to get to the water, and also for us without having to climb. So that's good. And then we need a little bit more terrain back over here. Okay, that's looking good. Now I could just drop this here, and I might go ahead and do that. But I'm thinking also we want things to line up on the other end. And so I could put a couple of smaller blocks in here. I'm just debating if I want to do that or not, and I think I do. So I'm going to put that there. We're going to put this over here and fill this hole. And I don't need to put anything down there because the player will never see that. There we go. Then we can put the half-size block in here, kind of a step down. And I'll put 2 of them in there because I need to create a path out of the mountains so that you can get up to there and without having to climb necessarily. And it would be good to put that there and kind of hide that seam. We can stick this little piece here on the end. And then to fill this gap, we'll pick that up and put it back down, and the shorter cliff pieces are over here. And I think that will sit in here nicely and give a little bit of a finishing edge to that. Yep, that'll work good. And then we'll need a ramp to get up here. So we can do something like this. And we'll need a ramp of some kind, I suppose, to get up here. So we can use a slope, which we've already used once. I think that would be a good idea. And we've already used this slope once. So I'll try to limit the number of shapes that I'm bringing into the toy box here to keep the graphical memory low. And then I just need to fill in this gap under here. And there, we've got a path to get up in the mountains. Now that could sit there, but I don't think I have anything wide enough to fill in here. And I don't have an inner cliff here for this, so I think I might just do that and put that in for our finishing touch. And that'll have to be good enough. Okay, so that's done, that's done. We've got a way to get up over there. So now, once you've got the bulk of the terrain in, then we can focus on adding some of the larger building structures. These would include set pieces, which can add a lot of interest and detail to your toy box. They also take up the most memory, so you want to be selective again about which ones of these you choose. I want to use this tower fort out of the set pieces drawer because this looks like a nice villain's lair. So we can put this over here somewhat like that. I think that'll work pretty decent. And we may even move this over a little bit. Like so. That'll cover up these little smaller blocks as well. And actually I need to move this over this way a little bit so that the edge of that isn't hanging off the edge of my world. There we go. And another good set piece to put down is the Dragon's Gate, and I think I want to put that over here because it's kind of fun having the Disney dragon fly around the toy box. So we'll put this back in this little corner over here. That could be useful for some little adventures. And then finally with the terrain, the top of this is looking kind of flat to me. So I'm going to go ahead and create some little rocky areas up here. And there's a bunch of different ways to do this, but we can basically just kind of create some little rock formations. Just kind of have these set up in some different ways. We'll put a tall one over here, like this. And then fit in some rock formations around this. So let's see, I think this one kind of lines up a little bit with the slopes of that. So that's a good one to put in. And then maybe this one back here could be good, or we could put in that one. So there's a lot of possibilities of things we can do. I kind of like this one. But you can tweak it around a little bit and play with it. These things don't have to be exact. But it's kind of nice just to have some rocks and things to climb on. And that kind of lines up a little bit with that. There. So if I'm in here with another player, I could be attacking from this side while they're over there in that fortress on the other side, and we can be shooting at each other with cannons or something. Oh, we need to fill in this gap down here. Now this is going to be too wide, so we're not going to be able to do that. So I'm thinking we're going to need to use this narrower block. There we go. And I don't need to fill that all the way across because, again, the player's not going to see that. Oh, the dragon's in here somewhere. There he is. That's just a lot of fun having him show up and when you're in here playing or building or whatever. I like that. Okay, so now we need to fill in this little area, and I'll do that offline. It's not important that that be critical. You've seen how I did that over here before, so it's not important that I show you how to do that. So now that we've got the terrain in here, the next part is the buildings. And so you can put in a number of different kinds of buildings here. There's full building sets. So we can put in the different set pieces as we've done. There's complete buildings where you just put them down once and they're in. And then there's building sets. And I think even before I put in those, there we go. Let's wait for that music to stop. Okay, make sure I got this lined up. And I'm going to put a little bit of a wall around the village. I don't want anything too high because it is just a village, so I don't need a full wall. If anyone ever invaded, they could go over to the castle over there. But we need to have something around the village here because I plan to put some townspeople in here and I don't want them getting loose and getting away from me. So the short wall here will kind of limit where they can go. There we are, and I think that may be big enough. I'll wait and see. Go ahead and fill in this other end of the village. Okay. And then we can go ahead and put in the buildings. And in the building sets, you can find different things that you can combine to make buildings. And so we can put together any number of these bases. There's a lot of possibilities here. And we don't have to make this too structured. Medieval times, I don't think they laid out things quite as precisely as they do now. So for the fantasy setting here, I think this should be fine. I am, however, going to move these back a little bit. So we can put those down, and then we can put different roofs on them. So on this one, for example, we can stick that roof on. And on this one, we can put something completely different down, like that. We can combine these things a little bit differently. So I could put a different side down on this guy. So it looks like a very different house from that one over there. And I could put down a different front on this, so that it looks like a different house. So a lot of different options. And over here, we also have things like this. So I can put down something like that. And have a very different kind of structure. So every one of these looks different, but they're using the same limited number of pieces. We also have stone bases, and I think I'm going to put one down over here. And while we're right here, there's a large Fantasyland chimney. So I can stick that up over here like that. Is that dragon again? And I'm going to go ahead and put down the water wheel over here, because I think that's kind of a cool little thing. And even though it takes up a lot of resources because it's animated and water and everything, I think that still looks pretty good. And we've got some other building shapes we can play with, so we can put down a tower back here. And stick a top on it. There's a well we can put down in the middle of the village. This would be the water supply where all of the villagers get their water. And it would also be a place that the brooms might be going to get their water. And then we have these little awnings. So we can put like a little awning shed over here, like that. So lots of different little details and things you can do with these buildings. And I'm going to go ahead and put down one more building back here. Like that. So now I know where the end of the village is. Now I can put in the wall. Back corner of this wall. And I think, let's see, if we put this large one down and then a small one, I think that'll work. Just want to make sure I leave enough room for some plants around here. And then this serves as a nice little barrier, as I said, for the townspeople, so they're not going to be able to run out. This will keep them penned in. The only way they can get out is through this little front area here, so they might still escape, but they won't get far. We can create some roads or footpaths to connect the different buildings and make it look a little bit more like a village. Yeah, flip that around. Put some nice little paths down here around the village. This is how people will get around here. Yeah, I guess maybe we need to use this. We'll flip it that way. Here we go. There. That's starting to look like a nice little village. I like that. And we'll go ahead and continue this on over to the bridge. And there should be a little path that heads back here. And so that doesn't get too repetitive. We can mix things up a little bit. There we go. So that gets us over to the mill. Now we've got a little village set up. So now that we have the village, we can put in the plants. And I'm going to focus primarily on these first pieces here in the plants drawer, which are customizable. And these first 9 pieces, I can set them to a theme that matches the dragon theme that I'm using. So I'm going to set that to my theme for that piece. And we can do that for all of these. Maybe put that over here. That's interesting how that... That's kind of weird. Yeah, once in a while you run into little bugs like that, but it's easy enough to work around them. And just move the item that you are having trouble with until you find a spot where it'll fit. So as I said, each of these pieces here is designed to go with the Dragon Domain theme. They match the terrain. They match the Dragon's Gate back there that I'm using. And I think they fit the Fantasia setting here pretty well. And one more. There we go. Very good. And you can combine these trees in different ways. So if you want a nice cluster of trees, for example, we can come over here and let's see, we'll go ahead and put these up a little close to the mountains so you can kind of put them on top of each other and put them back to back and create like a nice larger cluster of trees. You can also combine them a little bit differently so it's not quite so structured and do something like this. And this little piece here just kind of makes a nice little finishing edge for that. So you can make some odd little shapes and put the dense trees together to create little paths through your toy box of places where you want your players to go. And we'll put this one up kind of close to the cave there to draw a little attention to it. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of fill in some trees here and put these in some different places. And I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, I've put in some trees all throughout here, and I've added a bunch of different things, little different clusters of trees, and I put them along the edges of things to make for some nice edging. Added them up here in the mountains, as well as down in the valley. Put some up over here. And I added a little castle with a tower back here in the corner because I have a little plan for that area. Some additional little rock formations and some plant clusters up here on top of the cliffs and along the path to get up there, so there's a little bit of scenery to look at. And added them around the waterfall and around up here. This area over here I'm kind of leaving empty right now. My memory is starting to get a little full. I've used about 2/3 of it so far, so I don't want to fill too much more because I'm wanting to leave room for the games and activities that I'm going to be adding. But there's still a little bit more we can do here. So we have all of the big stuff in place. Excuse me. And the plants that are around it. So now we can add some decorations. And we can add things like little blocks here, little rocks, different things like that. Some braziers like I added in the castle. You can add in some logs in the woods and crates and different things here in the village. This is also a good time to add little things like flower beds, which will really help add some nice finishing touches here to some of the little homes in the village. And it just makes it kind of rich. You don't want to do too many decorations because you don't want to add too many different models that will increase the memory usage in your toy box. But a good rule of thumb, I think, you can add maybe a dozen or so different ones and mix them up a little bit for some variety. So there's some creative ways you can use those. There's also little tiny flowers that you can add, kind of like wildflowers, that will add a little bit of a nice finishing touch to the toy box as well. And those are kind of fun. We can put these out here in the woods and just a few. Don't want to add too many, but just something in maybe the larger areas that are not having quite as many things in them, just to break them up a little bit. So maybe putting one about there or so. So you get the idea. So just looking to add some finishing touches on it and kind of help bring it to life a little bit. But you typically want to leave at least a third of your memory free for enemies and games and different things that you want to use. So there we have it, a nice looking little world with a fantasy theme that looks like it's something out of Fantasia. So I like how this has turned out. This is looking really good. Oh, the dragon just shot something out over there. This will be a fun setting to play in once we have some games and activities set up for Mickey. Be sure to subscribe to my channel or sign up on my blog so you can follow my progress in this toy box and see what kind of games I build for Mickey to play. I hope you found this video helpful, especially if you plan to build this in your own toy box. And if you enjoyed it, please give it a like. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.